Hey guys, Philip Shadler here, your local real estate agent in Los Angeles. And let's talk about some of the news that are going on in the real estate world. It is quite a shakeup of what has happened in the last few days. But really, this real estate lawsuit started already in October 2023, when I heard about it the first time. But first of all, let's look at some quick data before we dive into the subject. So first of all, the inventory currently for single family homes has risen a little bit. So it's at 507,000. It used to be 468 just a few months ago. So it's gone up a little bit. And I think what's happening is sellers who've been waiting for their interest rate to drop are tired of waiting, basically, and they have to sell because sometimes you just cannot wait any longer. So there is a little bit more sellers coming on the market, but the buyer activity has kind of slowed down a little bit. And I think that's why we see the inventory inching up. Price reductions. Let me just look at this real quick here. Let me share this screen with you here. Let me just get to that. Price reductions have been, on the average, it's usually around 30-35%. So there's really nothing unusual here. It's common that people overprice the properties. Actually, I'm working on a video on that. But so price reductions are 30-35%. That is about average. New listing, we have, oops, sorry, we went to the wrong tab. New listings, where are they now? Lost them, sorry. I think I closed it. New listings have gone up as well. Now let's look at some of the data here. So current interest rates is around 7% for 30-year fixed. The average DOM, days on market, is 70 days here in the Los Angeles greater area. So it's a little bit of a slower market. We do have more inventory than a year ago. So again, over 500,000. And as of January 2023, the U.S. housing inventory, this is including townhouses, condominiums, and single-family residences, where the above number, the 500,000, is only including single-family residences. So with the total housing, we have over 1 million. I would say for a healthy market, we should probably have 2 million to have a healthy market, a healthy supply. But anyway, it is a 2.2% increase. Oh, wait, here you can see it, I think. Let's see, what else do we have? eXp Realty is the broker with the highest agent count, which I just found out, which is great, which is my brokerage. And we also have the highest transaction per individual brokerage, which is exciting. This here is a interesting thing, because we're going to talk about commission situation in a minute here. And you can Google this one here. This is the FTC $62 million real estate lawsuit, which is referring to discount brokers, which we're going to get into next. Another thing I want to say really quickly is eXp Realty is named #1 on Forbes America's Best Large Employers 2024 list, which is exciting, right? Because this is a company that I'm affiliated with, and I'm also a stock owner. I'm very happy to be associated with. Now, let's talk about the news that you hear all over about the real estate commission lawsuit, right? So I'm sure you heard lots of it, and what I'm telling you is not new, but I'm just giving you my spin of it. So a attorney has found several homeowners who claim that they have been coerced and tricked into paying a buyer's agent commission, right? This is interesting to me, because when you sign an RLA, a residential listing agreement, prior to that, you negotiate a commission, right? The commissions are negotiable, always have been. Like the news talked about the 6% thing. I wouldn't say that it's a thing. It's never been a thing. It's always been negotiable, right? So it just depends on what value the real estate agent brings to you. So there is real estate agents who may be worth more and less, just like doctors and attorneys and other professions, right? It depends what kind of service you want. In other words, if you have a discount broker, how can you expect to get a 5-star restaurant service if you're paying fast food restaurant prices, right? It doesn't really work that way. But anyway, so these people claim they have been coerced and tricked into paying a buyer's agent commission, even though in the RLA, they agreed to this in writing with initial that they have an agreed commission. Let's say it's 5% or 6%, and 3% goes to one side and 3% goes to the buyer's agent, right? And the other one to the seller's agent. That has been the way it has been for decades. That is going to change. So National Association of Realtors has been taken to court, lost. Many brokers have lost for the same reason that that people claim they were tricked into buying a buyer's agent commission. Now, this is probably a fact that a lot of people don't know or didn't know, that the seller so far up until now has paid for both, right? Has paid for both sides, and there is a reason for that. Now, it's kind of like a conundrum, because if the seller doesn't pay a buyer's agent compensation, there might be less agent bringing buyers to the listing. So therefore, there is less activity, less likely of a bidding war, and the seller might sell for less. That's kind of the idea. In my estimation, this is just an estimation, I think 50% of the buyer pool comes from the buyer's agent coming to your listing, and 50% comes from the activity of the seller agent, the listing agent, doing the advertising, the open house, the social media posting, getting all the excitement going. Now, what's going to happen is the new rule starting in July 2024, it is no longer allowed to announce or list the compensation for the buyer's agent, right, on the MLS. So that is going to be gone. And the reason for that, I would imagine, is if a buyer's agent, let's say you as a buyer, you're trying to buy a house, you have an agent, and the agent is searching for properties, and let's say he has a list of 10 properties, and let's say one of them says buyer's agent commission 0. Well, it would be assumable that the agent might skip that property because he or she doesn't want to work for free, which you cannot blame, right? So that is gone. Now, if you have a listing like that, you would probably call the listing agent. So the buyer agent would call the listing agent and find out if there's any compensation for the buyer. Now, if there isn't, and I've already seen one listing that says 0 compensation for the buyer's agent, right? So now, as a buyer, you would have 2 options, as far as I know. You can either represent yourself, and that's quite a daunting task. I'm just showing you this real quick. I don't know if you can see this. These documents right here, oops, I don't know if you can see it, is what it takes to do a buyer transaction. This is about 60 documents, disclosure forms and all kinds of stuff. So these documents accumulate over the time of the process of being in escrow. Now, this is a daunting task. You could go the route on your own and get an attorney, and the attorney would make sure that you have all these forms properly organized and executed, because otherwise they won't have any value to it. But what the attorney will not do is show you houses. The attorney also will not create a CMA, like a comparative market analysis. The attorney will not study the market for you to see if you're overpaying or if the property is priced properly, right? So this is going to be all on you if you represent yourself. That's option number 1. The other option is, and this is going to be mandated as of 2024. Now, the courts still have to approve this, but it looks like it will be mandated that every buyer has to sign a BRBC form, which is a buyer broker compensation form, in which it states a time frame for how long this buyer agent represents you in the process of buying a property, and the commission is negotiated also and set in that particular form. Now, in my particular case, I have 4 buyers at the moment, and I have informed them all about this. And, and I have no issues. I mean, buyers can always go with a discount broker. That's their choice. There's always people that will do it for less, but I'm not sure if they're going to do the same amount of due diligence in a transaction, because you have to remember, when we as agents enter into a transaction, we expose ourselves to legal risks. I expose my brokerage to legal risks, and you as well. So if you have an agent that is really educated on top of things, and I have a massive experienced brokerage behind me, so our job is to, when we represent you in the sale of, in the purchase of a property, that you don't have any legal consequences later on coming down on you, or even us, the brokerage, or myself, because all these forms have to be properly executed. So if you have a disclosure form, for example, it doesn't have is a date missing, a check mark is missing, an initial is missing, or a signature is missing, well, it is most likely that that form is no longer valid. And if for whatever reason somebody later on wants to sue, they're going to bring these forms to the attorney. Attorney looks at the forms and sees there's something missing, a check form, and already you have a chance for a lawsuit. And this is our job, to prevent something like this happening to our clients. And due to that, there's a large risk. So I would not discount my fees for that, because there's a lot of amount of time and study and experience going into it. And in the last 6 years, I've studied the market extensively. I have 3 coaches, Brian Casella, Goga Betke, and Tristan Almada. and they're all fantastic. And really, it's obviously they cost money, but that helps me to stay on top of the market. I go on regular meetings with my broker every Wednesday. We have contract classes. Anyway, to make a long story short, the buying process is very likely going to change drastically. Also, what I could imagine, I believe, I mean, this is again my estimation, I believe that primarily most agents deal with buyer on the buyer side, right? I prefer to be on the seller side for different reasons. I love the marketing. I just love the whole marketing part of the listing. Now, since there is more buyer agent, and it makes sense because it's a little bit easier. I'm not saying a buyer agent doesn't work hard. There's a lot of workload there, right? But it's a little bit easier because the buyer agent so far has piggybacked off the listing agent, depending on what that listing agent, what kind of commission that listing agent negotiated in the listing appointment, right? So let's say you're going into a listing appointment as a listing agent, which is not easy. You have to train, you have to become really good at this. You have to acquire a certain set of skills. Number one, you have to be able to cold call. I know it's annoying. You guys don't like it, but you have to, first of all, create the talent to cold call, and so that you don't get hung up the first 10 seconds, right? If you're lucky enough to get that far, then the next challenge is to convince the seller to have a meeting with you. Now, let's say you have 5 meetings set up for a week. Traditionally, 2 canceled, so only have 3 left. If you go into this listing meeting, you really have to be on top of your A game, because you literally have about 10 to 20 seconds to convince a total stranger to trust you with the most valuable assets, or one of the most valuable financial assets, selling their home, right? So this is not an easy task to do. However, if the selling agent is skilled enough and shows the seller what value they bring to the table, then you can go negotiate a commission, and the buyer agent up until now would just get the other half. So the buyer agent really doesn't have to negotiate it. The buyer agent just comes on board, and if you accept the deal that the buyer agent makes, then that buyer agent gets the other commission. So there's really not as much training and effort, in my opinion. Again, I'm not knocking buyer's agent. There's still a lot of work, but I could imagine that after this whole commission lawsuits issue is really kind of the dust settles, it's very possible that a lot of buyer agents will leave the industry. A lot of agents could leave the industry anyway. I think last year, from what I've heard, 120 or 140,000 agents left the industry. So again, if going forward, a lot of changes will come. That's for sure. It's not 100% how it's going to go. You could, for example, let's say if an agent finds a listing that has 0% buyer agent compensation, right? That buyer agent could call the listing agent and say, hey, I see you have 0 BAC, 0 compensation for the buyer. However, let's say you have a cash deal, and they say, I have a cash deal. Is there any way your seller would offer 5 or 1% at least, to the buyer agent commission? So then if you as a buyer have signed a buyer broker compensation agreement at 2.5, now if the buyer agent is able to negotiate with the seller that they pay 1%, then you only have to pay 1.5%. So again, it depends on what you negotiate, but this is basically the gist of it. So right now there's a lot of information out there on this issue, and some of the information is wrong. I think it's just you got to really talk to somebody or listen to somebody that's in the industry, because some of the news outlets right now, they discovered they didn't even talk to the real estate agents or any associations. They just look at the news and said, oh my gosh, 6%, the 6% commission thing is over in real estate. It's all falling apart. It changes the industry completely. Here's what I think is going to happen. A business savvy seller, a business minded seller, understands the fact that paying a buyer agent compensation may bring more people to the property, which is really what you want as a seller, right? You want to have as many people, as many eyeballs on your listing as possible, so that you hopefully can create a bidding war, right? So more offers come in. Now, if you don't pay the BAC, the buyer agent compensation, then only, I think, about half of the buyer pool comes from those agents, may be gone, right? So what could happen is that sellers continue to offer a commission, maybe not as much, but they may continue to offer commission because they want buyer agents to bring clients to their property, to their listing. This could be because even though the National Association of Realtors claims or says that it's no longer allowed to list the buyer compensation on the MLS. It doesn't say that the seller is prohibited from doing so, from offering one. I'm not putting on the MLS, but for offering a compensation. So this is going to be interesting how this will play out. For real estate agents, it's a big change. There's definitely a big change, and a lot of people are worried, concerned, obviously, because they look at the news. But again, I would say let's see what happens in the next few weeks when the dust settles, because all this has still to be approved by the courts, even though I think NAR settled to pay, I think, $460 million, even though they claim they've done nothing wrong. It's also possible that National Association of Realtors will lose a lot of members. They have approximately 1.4 million members. It's possible that they move, that they just disengage from NAR, because I think a lot of agents are disappointed with how NAR has handled this. From what I read online, I'm not sure. I haven't seen the details. I'm not going to blame anything or make any statements in that regard. But I've seen a lot of frustration with agents who feel that they have been paying membership to NAR and they're kind of being ignored or not really, I don't know, cared about. Anyway, if you have any questions about real estate, please call me at 310-918-2260. If you would like a free home evaluation, I'd be glad to do that. No charge, no obligation to you. And in the meantime, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this. And I'll see you again on the side. And please, if you could do me a favor, if you could comment down below your opinion. If you're a client or if you're a real estate agent, I would love to hear your input, your comments. And of course, for the members of the public who dislike real estate agents, this is probably a heyday for you. But trust me, there are some agents that do care about the best interest for the client. I'm one of them. I wholeheartedly believe that. This is also the reason why I don't really see a reason to discount my services. Again, there's lots of discount agents, and I'm totally fine if you go with them. I just know what I bring to the table. But I think a lot of agents are going to stand up and say, this is what I deliver. This is what I can do for you. And if you don't want to, you can go someplace else and get it cheaper. I don't know if that representation is going to be necessarily better, because as I mentioned before, you cannot go into a fast food restaurant and expect a 5-star restaurant service. Because I want you to do one thing. If you could do me a favor, talking about discount brokers, and I don't want to name any names in order to protect the guilty. But if you go ahead and Google FTC $62 million lawsuit, just Google that, and you will see what I mean, how discount brokers sometimes tell you that you save a lot of money by using their services, but it ended up that they ended up in court because the clients that they had ended up paying more than they would have with a traditional real estate agent. So this is very important for people to know, because it's easy to get lured and enticed into a low discount, a low commission deal. But then there's all these charges adding up at the end. And this is what this particular brokerage did. And I think some of them came even up, but when they added everything up, it was like 7%. Again, Google it, FTC, $62 million lawsuit. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.